Hello and welcome to Grant's Comics, where we talk all things comic books. So, with the current rise of superhero fighting games and rumors swirling around about a potential Injustice 3, I wanted to talk about the roster that I would love to see in a hypothetical new DC fighting game. I set my roster at 30 base game characters and 10 DLC guest characters, along with giving the majority of them 3 costumes. I tried to balance characters you must have in any DC fighting game, along with a good amount of surprises. Now, don't forget to subscribe, and let's get into the characters. First up, of course, as always, is Batman. I don't think you could ever really have a roster without him. He is just guaranteed in any DC game ever. He's the most popular superhero of all time. I think his main look should take a departure from a lot of the other video game Batman we've seen, and actually take the costume from the upcoming Matt Fraction Batman run, with the blue suit, blue trunks, and blue symbol. I think it's a really good, modernized, yet still classic feeling suit that I honestly could see being in a lot of video games nowadays, and the blue kind of would differentiate him in this. I would envision again, Batman has so many options, but if you only had to choose 3 for skins, I would choose the Golden Age outfit, the Damian Wayne issue 66 version, because, spoilers, Damian Wayne is not going to be on the list later on, but I just really like that suit, and I think that has a lot of potential of cool stuff in there. And last, the Batman 66 costume. I just think it's super cool. It'd be classic there. Maybe have some emote with him doing the dance or anything. As for like his moveset, I think really it should just be a very basic, just easy to learn character. A lot of stuff you expect. Maybe more of an emphasis on gadgets. Super move could be something with the Batmobile like we've seen in Injustice before. The Batwing. Maybe calling in some of the other heroes that aren't on this list, like Batwing, the hero, or Red Hood, maybe. But yeah, I think definitely just focus on him being a easy character for newcomers to learn. Next up, of course, is Superman, whose main outfit, I think, should just be his classic red trunks. I think that's just the way to go. I think most games kind of get that with, like, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. I think his Injustice costumes have been terrible, basically across the board. You could make some maybe decent stuff in Injustice 2's skin creator, but it is just dire. His alternate outfits, I think, should consist of a 2025 movie skin, because obviously it's coming out right now. It's huge. Just no-brainer put in there. That also fills the role of kind of having that Kingdom Come-like outfit. Superman Blue, always been a favorite of mine. I know a lot of people aren't a fan of it, but I just think it's such a radical departure that it's really, really cool, honestly. And last choice, of course, the black suit. You can't have alternate costumes for Superman without having the black suit somewhere. It's like Spider-Man. As for Superman's moveset, I think maybe you could make him a little harder to learn, honestly. He has so many skills, and he's so powerful. Of course, laser vision, ice breath, all this stuff that is in there. I think what would make him more different is we haven't really seen a more optimistic Superman in a fighting game after these Injustice years. So it'd be kind of nice to have more of the Boy Scout Superman here. Next up, we have Wonder Woman. I really think her main suit should be again, a classic one. Probably like the bathing suit look would probably be the best. I know a lot of people have been clamoring for that to be in the movies again. And I agree I think the Gal Gadot costume was great, but I think that would be good for returning to kind of the more classic era. As for skins, my favorite Wonder Woman costume is actually the newest, the Absolute costume. I think it's fantastic. I think it does the New 52 costume, but just better. You could maybe even have her have the robot arm that she has in that storyline if you've been reading it, and maybe even have an alternate attack with the big Buster sword too. Her second costume I chose was the Kingdom Come costume. It showed up in Wonder Woman 1984, basically virtually identical, so I'd imagine it looks something like that in a video game form. It's just super cool, super recognizable. And for her last costume, I chose Linda Carter, again, kind of to fit with the Batman 66 too, of having these like old school ones. And if you've ever played like the newer Mortal Kombat, they have a lot of new like movie costumes and stuff with the new and old actors. Yeah. So next up, we have the Flash. And this is going to be the first slight curveball because surprise, surprise, yes, Wally West is my favorite Flash. Everyone who's read a Flash comic's favorite Flash is Wally West, especially if you were born after a certain era or haven't just watched the CW show. Barry's great, but it seems like all of DC's kind of realigning around using Wally West as the main Flash again, which I think is awesome because he's just the best version, period. And I think it'd be a lot more fun in this game to kind of have that dynamic of a younger Justice League member, definitely keeping him on the younger side. His main suit would just be his 90s suit, I think, because that's what everyone knows him as in the Justice League cartoon, similar to that, with the white eyes and everything. It's still used to this day. It's so good. For skins, similar to Injustice 2, I had to include Jay Garrick in there. That costume is just awesome, and it's a really good way to just fit in another character, but with just as a skin. Next up, I have the Rebirth outfit, which is, of course, Wally when he has, like, his hair sticking out, kind of. I've always really, really liked the design of the suit. I just kind of don't really like what it means in the status of the comics itself. It kind of feels like he's just Flash Jr. at that point, because it's, I mean, the silver highlights instead of the gold highlights, the hair still, it kind of just makes him feel like Kid Flash still. So I love the design of the suit, but the meaning of it, but still sneaks in here for sure. And the last suit is actually a Barry suit, and it's the Blue Lantern suit from Blackest Night. I just think it's really cool. Would go heavily against the red of the other suits. And I think a lot of people clamor for like Sinestro Batman or like all those alternate Lantern outfits. Speaking of lanterns, our next character is Green Lantern. For our main variant here, we're going to have John Stewart, classic outfit, of course. And for the skins, I'll just get through it. Guy Gardner, Kyle Rayner, Jessica Cruz are the three I'm going to choose here. Guy Gardner's obvious because of the new Superman movie coming out, so of course there's going to be a lot of attention paid to him now, and he's a great character. Kyle Rayner, of course, fan favorite. He's kind of in that same boat as Wally and Connor Hawke, those kind of 90s characters that people really, really like. And he hasn't really been in any video games or much of anything recently besides a few comics, so it'd be super cool to see him. And Jessica Cruz is kind of like the fan favorite of the modern like trio of lanterns. I know there's been a few, there's tons, but she seems to be the like fan favorite from that, and she's even appeared in a few projects and movies at this point too. If you're wondering why certain other very famous Green Lantern isn't on this list, just wait for later on, because that might get answered. Next up is Aquaman. Of course, Aquaman is huge. His first movie made $1 billion. Everyone was shocked by that. But I wanted to kind of focus in on doing something a little different. We've seen Aquaman in the Injustice games. I really wanted to do the Kal Dur version from like Young Justice, and they even have him become Aquaman in the comics. So I thought, oh, that'd be super cool. Use his water swords, his water weaponry would just be awesome in a fight. I think it would be really, really cool. Kind of shake it up. And of course, as a skin, I would still include Arthur. It might be a little weird having him still use the water weapons, but I think they both got to be in there. I think especially if you want to look a little bit of a different, unique roster, I think it'd be really cool to have Kal Dur on there. In addition to the Arthur skin, I would definitely have a Young Justice skin. His the look, the original look with the red outfit, that's classic. And the Black Manta Kal Dur for sure, because spoilers, Black Manta is not on the roster here. He was in Injustice 2. But I just think there's not enough space for him, and I think the Black Manta kind of outfit from later on in Injustice could look really, really cool. Next up, we have Martian Manhunter, of course. For him, I kind of just imagine him having the, again, very classic outfit. I really envision this game as having a very much a Silver Age kind of vibe to it, with this scattering of 90s and 2000s characters. But for Martian Manhunter, especially with how crazy his alts here are going to get, I think it's just easy to keep him normal. For skins, we have the new Absolute look. I think it's just so wildly different. It'd be even cooler if it had like kind of a claymation effect, or you could just go crazy with it. I mean, you could maybe even have the character itself take full inspiration from Absolute. His next skin, which I've debated putting this here, I said full Martian. His full Martian look always is super cool, but I almost could see that being a part of his moveset too, if you want maybe some heavy attacks or something like that. So if you want an alternate instead of the full Martian, I'll just throw in the New 52 look, which is definitely pretty different, but has been used in a lot of stuff too. For his last costume, I'll throw in the White Martian. Again, just trying to get some other characters in here. The White Martians are obviously big villains for the Justice League, so I think it'd be really cool to have them in here, kind of under the Martian Manhunter like moniker. Next up, we have the first character who I think isn't a instant shoo-in. And that's Zatanna. I think Zatanna is very well liked. She was in Injustice 1. I think there's been a lot of people that have clamored for her to be in a Justice League or Justice League Dark movie. And I just think there's so much potential there with the magic attacks here. A lot of, like, fun flair. Again, Silver Age type stuff would be super, super cool. For skins, I have to put in Zatara, who is one of the oldest DC characters, who is in Action Comics #1 alongside Superman. I think it'd be super cool. I always was fond of him in the Young Justice cartoon when he became Dr. Fate, and that whole storyline I always thought was really cool. Kind of made me like his character a lot more. For the second look, I put the New 52 outfit. You're going to see a lot of this New 52 Rebirth. A lot of these revamps are going to be in here a lot because the costumes were just so radical. Luckily, I think that costume is one of the good ones because there were some New 52 costumes that weren't so great. The last costume is going to be the Justice League Detroit outfit. Again, pretty different from the rest, but of course we want variety here. I think maybe you could even do something cool and make this one cel-shaded. I think that would be really cool for the whole magician aspect of it. Next up's Constantine, of course, one of the most heavily requested Injustice characters, who is shockingly not in any of the games. I can't believe that. Again, going down the road of the magic characters. But I think he'd differ a lot from Zatanna, and I almost even imagine maybe he could summon, like Swamp Thing would be cool, or Etrigan. Have a lot of these Justice League Dark characters appear here. Maybe put Shadow Pact characters in there too. A lot of that stuff would be really, really cool, and everyone wants Constantine. And if they make another DC game and Constantine is not in the roster, I think they must just have a vendetta against him at this point. As for skins, the first skin I put is the Keanu Reeves skin from the movie. I think that would be really fun. I could see that being one of those things they promote as like a pre-order bonus or something. Just a cool Keanu Reeves movie skin. Next up is Earth 13, the Hellblazer skin, which is a very, very radically different skin, but would be hilarious in one of these games. I think you could have a lot of funny voice lines of people talking to him in this skin. And then, of course, last is Matt Ryan, who is the definitive on-screen Constantine. I know people like Keanu Reeves, but come on. Matt Ryan had so much more time, too, on the show, on Arrow, on Legends of Tomorrow, on all of that. He was just, like, perfect. There's a reason he's kept voicing Constantine throughout animation in the last few years, too. I think Constantine is a must for this game. Next up is Robin. This specific Robin I want to base off of Tim Drake. I do really, really like all of the Robins, but I can't... With this kind of timeline or this kind of game, I just don't really envision having Dick Grayson in there. He's just too old. Everyone likes him as Nightwing more, I think, at this point. Jason Todd's kind of complicated. I don't think most people don't think of him as a definitive Robin. And so I kind of just went and said, okay, Tim Drake's got to be in here. Kind of got to go for the older Robin look. I've never loved Tim Drake still being Robin with Damian Wayne, but it's one of those things where it's kind of a give or take, because Tim Drake's the best Robin, but also he's super cool as Red Robin too. And Red Robin here is also one of his alts, of course, specifically based off the post-Infinite Crisis look. I just think that is like the definitive look. I know people really like the New 52 suit, and that suit was literally just added to Fortnite and kind of reignited the love for Tim Drake. But I think that one's a little over-designed, and I just really like the cowl for him, so that would be there. For his next suit, I'd put the black and red suit. That's just so definitive. I mean, you look at it, and most people either take the original appearance, where he had the green tights, kind of, or you take the black and red suit from later on after Superboy died. And I just think that black and red suit's awesome. It's even in the Lego games. People just know that as the Tim Drake suit, and it kind of meshes well with the Red Robin, too. And for the last skin, similar to something like Jay Garrick or the White Martian, I put Stephanie Brown in here. I think you could mash up the movesets really well here, where it would work and be pretty different. And they're both, of course, from the same era, so it would fit, and trying to get more Robin squeezed in here, of course. I would imagine his moveset using a lot of the staff, just because it's how it is, being very sneaky, probably very similar to Injustice 2. Maybe his super move could be something similar to like Mega Man and Super Smash Bros. And he gets all the Robins to come in and they all beat up on someone. That could be super cool. And I don't think Damian would quite work for this game. I don't know, depending on what age they'd make him, if they would want like a 12-year-old beating up people. Even in Injustice 2, they aged him up. So I think Tim Drake just fits the best here. Next up is a little bit of unexpected character with a twist. So Supergirl is going to be on a roster on any future DC fighting game, especially with the new movie coming out, the success of the CW-verse, all of that stuff. But I wanted to add a little twist to add kind of a dynamic and just not make her a clone of Superman. And I wanted to make it Supergirl and Krypto. So Krypto could maybe be sent out, doing other stuff, a lot of combos. I kind of imagine them being one of the harder characters to learn in the game, just balancing their dynamic, but when you get them down, they're extremely powerful. And I think there could just be a ton of really fun and unique situations here that would just be really, really cool. For her super move, I kind of was debating here. I think her Red Lantern like phase could be really, really cool here, but I worry there might be too much lantern stuff in this. So you could do other stuff too. The typical punching through buildings, stuff like that. For skins, of course, the movie suit. We're probably going to see it in a few weeks here anyway when the movie comes out, and it's probably going to look pretty similar to the movie suit we've already seen, just obviously with the skirt and the cape. But I imagine it'll be a mashup of the movie suit and the Woman of Tomorrow suit. Her second ult, I think, should be the 2000s white t-shirt look. That's definitely a very defined alternate look for her when she came back after Crisis on Infinite Earths years later. And her last look should be a CW skin. Honestly, whichever one works. I prefer the earlier season look, but I know some other people like the later ones. They could choose whichever one. They're both different enough that could fit perfectly in the slot here. Crypto, I imagine, kind of changing throughout, where for the base skin, he's kind of that Labrador you always see. For the 2025 movie, he's more of the Terrier. And then CW, he's kind of maybe based him off Titans, because Crypto isn't really in the CW verse. And the white t-shirt you can make more comic booky looking again, kind of like the Labrador look. All right, next up is who I probably think is the most requested character for Injustice in the future and any DC fighting game. And I just am completely shocked, especially with the popularity of him. And that is Beast Boy. Beast Boy is necessary. Him transforming is the coolest gimmick ever. I was debating between him and Animal Man because Animal Man is one of my absolute favorite characters. But I said there's no way that you don't do Beast Boy instead. Beast Boy is way more popular and has the effect of literally transforming into animals. How cool would that be? You can't go wrong with it. I mean, just slam dunk character. Everyone would love to see him. Maybe Animal Man could show up in his ult attack with Vixen. How about that? For skins, I chose the 2003 Teen Titans skin. Of course, you gotta have that kind of purple and black look, which I think is definitely his most memorable look. I prefer the white and red, which would be what his main skin's based on. But also, we'd have the Rebirth look, where maybe he's a little younger and also has the kind of red and white. And then his last look, I know people hate this outfit, but I think would be kind of fun to see in here, would be his red-skinned look from the New 52. I think would be a really cool, just different one to see in there. Yeah, Beast Boy has to be in the next game. Next up is another one of the most requested characters, originally from Milestone, is Static Shock. Static Shock would be so awesome. People love the cartoon. People love him in Young Justice. He's just a fan favorite character. He's far and away the most popular Milestone character, and he just has so much potential. Yes, he uses lightning like the Flash, but they are completely different. For his skins, I put his first appearance with the baseball cap, kind of the all black suit. I think always is look cool. That's a shoo-in for it. That one you could maybe even make cell shaded too. Next up would be his New 52 skin. Again, cool, classic skin, different from the regular Static Shock look, kind of with the goggles there. Last but not least would be his Young Justice look, because I think, at least for my generation, I grew up more with Young Justice, so that was where I kind of became attached to a lot of these DC characters, and I just think he's super cool in that cartoon. All of the Milestone characters are awesome in that, and I think it'd be cool maybe even for an ult attack if you brought in Icon and Rocket and maybe some others into here and had them just do a Milestone team up. Next up, we have Booster Gold. Booster Gold is a fan favorite. He's supposedly getting a TV show sometime soon. We'll see how development is going to go on that. But Booster Gold, everyone loves him. You got to have him use skeets in his attacks. Maybe have Rip Hunter come out of a portal, shoot a gun, something cool like that. There's so much potential. He's a time traveler. He can fly. He can do so much stuff. His main look, I probably would go based more off the Jeff Johns run, which would probably be more of a newer costume compared to the other ones, but I think that's just his most known. But of course, as one of his skins, I would have to include the collar look, because that also is just an awesome kind of like 70s look. His second skin, a tiny bit of a spoiler if you haven't read a 20-year-old comic at this point from 52, but Supernova would be an awesome alternate costume. It'd be very different from his regular suit and would just be super cool. There's so many of the Booster Gold family of characters have donned the persona, so it'd be awesome to see him in this game. And for his last look, this is a tiny bit of a deep cut, but I really would love to see his Smallville race car outfit type suit with all the ads. I always really liked that idea. It's perfectly in line with his character. It'd be super cool. Maybe it'd be a little harder to wrangle the likenesses or something like that, but it would just be awesome to have his Smallville suit in here. Next up, this is the first full curveball I don't think people were expecting for this list. That's Sergeant Rock. Of course, Sergeant Rock has been getting a lot of hype with the rumors of a movie about him. I've always loved Sergeant Rock. I think he's such a cool character. Having him be rooted in that JSA World War II look to him, he's just awesome. That military stories are a key to the legacy of DC, and I think this kind of pays tribute to a lot of that. I think you have to have all of the different soldiers he's with in Easy Company helping him out in his moveset. And he would just be very different. He wouldn't be superpowered. He'd use a lot of just like a landmine or guns or grenades and stuff like that. He'd almost be like the Captain America of this game in that way, but even more gritty and realistic kind of. For his skins, you might think I'd have some trouble getting skins for him, but it was actually fairly easy. First up is GI Robot. I think GI Robot fits in perfectly well. Maybe have them, again, maybe give him a different ult or something, and maybe have him use a lot of his different weaponry. But as a base skin, GI Robot would be great. Next up is Rick Flag. I'd probably base it more off the yellow shirt kind of classic look in the comics, or you could base it off of the Suicide Squad where he also has a yellow shirt, or even Suicide Squad 2016 if you wanted to go in the military look. But Rick Flag would work perfectly. He's a military guy. Again, just about getting a lot of these other DC characters in here in a way. And the last one I chose is Captain Johnny Cloud, who's another very famous war character in the DC Comics. If you've ever read The New Frontier, you know how awesome of a character he is, and all of the losers are just awesome, awesome characters that I wish were utilized more, and that's why I'm really excited if we get this potential movie. It would be just super awesome to see all these war characters back. Next up, we have Arsenal. I think just with the vibe of this game where we have the kind of Wally West, Kyle Rayner generation of heroes, I kind of felt Arsenal kind of fits the bill more. I've always thought Arsenal's cool. Roy Harper's just a really interesting character in DC Comics, especially when written well. I think you could do so much for his moves. You have to have the boxing glove arrow. You have to have so many trick arrows. I mean, he'd be just super, super fun. Again, with his ult attack, getting all those other Arrow family characters, which it's so funny, there's that many of them now. But yes, getting all the Arrow characters in there to fight someone would be super cool. And of course, as a skin, we'd still have Oliver Queen Green Arrow. You can't not. I mean, it's just obvious. Next, I'd say we gotta have Connor Hawke in there too. That entire era of characters we really need to see back in the forefront again. I think he's super cool. And then last but not least is Speedy. You could either do Arsenal's classic, like, yellow hat, red shirt Speedy look. You could even do a little later on. Or you could even do the Mia Dearden Speedy and kind of mix things up and get just, again, another character in there. Next up is a very deep-cut character who has a massive, massive fan base, especially for comic readers. He has little appearances, but would be awesome to see in a potential DC fighting game and really mix things up and I think surprise and delight a lot of people, and that is Sideways. Sideways is easily the most popular new DC character who isn't derivative of anyone in I can't even say how long. I mean, everyone clamors to see more of him. Unfortunately, after his first run, he really only has made cameo appearances in the various summer events and crises, but he would just be awesome. He's DC's answer to Spider-Man, but his costume's awesome. And you'll notice at the beginning of this video, I mentioned that up to 3 costumes. And you might be saying, well, everyone here has had 3 costumes. Well, Sideways is going to break that because there's just not a lot to work with. He really only has 1 costume. And for one of his skins, I just said his unmasked look. He's just someone who doesn't have a lot of comic history to poke at. You, of course, could have just palette swaps and other stuff like that, but it's really tough. But I think he'd be a great surprise character. Next up, we have Mr. Terrific. There's so many things you could do with him. He's super smart. He has the T-spheres. There's so many inventions you could do. I think a lot of people really kind of treated him as one of the best, like, B-tier DC characters. And now he's finally getting done justice in the new Superman movie. Looks great. and he was even in Arrow too. He was decent in Arrow, but the new movie version I think is going to be better. I think you can't go wrong with his main costume just being the main Mr. Terrific suit everyone knows with the jacket. Of course, his first alternate skin has to be the movie skin. That's where a ton of people are going to be introduced to him as a character in general. And it's close to his comic suit, but again, you have the actor's likeness, maybe some voiceover. Another skin would be his Golden Age look of the Golden Age Mr. Terrific, who has one of maybe the dumbest Golden Age costumes, but it's endearing in a way too. It basically looks like if you just generated a Golden Age World War II era superhero, but the fair play, I think, adds a lot of charm. As for his last alternate costume, I'd go for his, like, no jacket look. Of course, make the suit design a little different, too. But there's a lot of times where he doesn't really have a jacket, and he just kind of has almost more of a tank top look to him. For Mr. Terrific's ult, I think it would be really cool to call on Phantom Girl from the Terrifics. You're going to see another character from the Terrifics later on here, so I didn't want to just have all of them. But I think it'd be a really cool dynamic there to fit in the Terrifics into this game, who you'll see more in the next character here, who is Metamorpho. Again, another character who's going to have a massive resurgence with this new Superman movie. Metamorpho's awesome. There's infinite moveset potential for him. I mean, having him transform into a bunch of different elements and just different stuff. You can have him be a gas. I mean, it's just super, super cool. And like I was saying, connecting it back to the Terrifics, I think giving Metamorpho Plastic Man as an alt, or even to help him out in some moves, would be cool. I was really struggling picking between Metamorpho and Plastic Man. Of course, you could have both, but I just think Metamorpho, he's got a little bit more popularity on his side now with the new movie. Of course, I think Plastic Man is a little more popular in general, but yeah, I just ultimately decided on that. For skins, of course, the 2025 movie. Pretty similar to the comic look again, with kind of the gray sweatpants, though. Next up is Element Girl. I particularly know her from Flashpoint, but you could take it from any of the iterations. There's tons. And then the Young Justice look, which is a look I don't really like, but it's different enough where I could definitely see in a hypothetical fighting game them just throwing it in because it's easy. And yeah, so in a way, with Mr. Terrific and Metamorpho here, I'd really like to see all of the Terrifics represented in a way. Next up, representing the Jack Kirby era of DC, is Big Barda. While I was writing this, the animated Mr. Miracle show just got announced, with her featured in it, of course, which was really funny to see because I had already wrote her on this list before that was even announced, that she was even going to be in the DCU. I think you have to represent Jack Kirby's kind of works in here, and you'll see another character later that also fits that era and fits that bill, but I think she's just an essential, really cool kind of curveball pick. And for her skins, I think you have to do a cel-shaded Jack Kirby, like, art style look one. Would be really, really cool. Would really, really pop. And for another look for her, I think would really be cool is a Mr. Miracle color scheme. Her and Mr. Miracle are way too different of characters to be, like, alternate costumes for each other. But having the little nod to him, I think, would be really, really cool. And for the last look, I think you could, again, do maybe a color swap based on, like, Granny Goodness or some of the other New Gods characters. Orion, even. Alright, now we're getting into the villains section here. Of course, no DC villains list is exempt from the Joker. The Joker is essential in a DC fighting game. It literally, you go Batman, Superman, and then the next character that's required is the Joker. Even probably above Wonder Woman, just because of how popular of a character he is. I think the Joker has been a little overdone in recent years. I think him coming back in Injustice 2 was honestly a mistake. I think it kind of lessened things, having him just be like kind of a copycat Joker. I think it was kind of lame. And I think his recent appearance in Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League was also pretty lame. I'd really like to bring him back to kind of his roots a little more, make him a little more mischievous, use like acid water flowers or, you know, killjoy buzzers. He uses the buzzers in Injustice, but still. For skins, talking about a overused character, but you can't not talk about the Joker and not have him. Batman Who Laughs does have to be a skin for him. Batman Who Laughs, speaking of derivative characters, is probably the most popular recent derivative character, and his design's awesome. It's cool. He's been in probably too many stories at this point, but you can't not have him in this. He was even in Mortal Kombat, which I think was really, really cool. look there. His next skin, I think, should probably be his movie outfit from Joker 2019. You could also swap this out for the Heath Ledger outfit, but I don't really know if they'd want to touch the likeness stuff with Heath Ledger after he unfortunately passed away. So the Walking Phoenix look, even if the sequel sucked, I think it could, his costume and his appearance as the Joker is very iconic. And if you were going to have a movie outfit in there that isn't Heath Ledger, I think the 2019 look is just awesome. For his last look, it's Death of the Family. The skin mask is just so creepy. I remember just reading New 52 Batman as a kid and being so just like transfixed by how creepy it was. But it's super cool. Some people think it's a little too edgy, but I don't know. I think it fits well with the story that Scott Snyder wanted to do in that run, and it's just, I think it's an essential Joker skin. Next up, we have Lex Luthor. I think Lex Luthor is just essential to have in a villain roster. When you think of Superman, you think of Lex Luthor with him. Of course, he'd be in his power armor. Maybe you could have kind of a Zero Suit Samus type effect where his armor breaks and you have a tiny bit sliver of health outside the armor to do some shenanigans. But all in all, he'd be in his power suit, using kryptonite, using a bunch of different gadgets and weaponry. Would be really, really cool to see him there. Of course, his first skin would have to be from the new movie. We don't fully know if he's going to have a power armor yet, but there's been some toy leaks that pretty much say it's going to happen. So, again, or you could just make up a power armor for that iteration. Next up, I picked the Superman armor that he wears. I always thought this look was pretty cool. Yeah, I think especially if he's already in his power armor, it would just work super, super well. For the last costume, I pick Alexander Luthor from Crisis on Infinite Earths and Infinite Crisis. I have a huge soft spot for this character. I think his entire arc is really cool. I know some people kind of don't like where he goes in Infinite Crisis, but I just think it'd be really cool and kind of a tribute to Crisis on Infinite Earths in this game. And of course, he has that kind of gold suit that would look super cool. He has the whole mop of red hair too, so it'd look very different from the bald other looks, and would be a skin I don't think a lot of people would be expecting. I mentioned earlier that there was a certain very famous Green Lantern I was not discussing, and finally he's here, but in a different form. Parallax would be the Green Lantern villain I'd choose here. I was wavering between Parallax or Sinestro. We've seen Sinestro before in some DC fighting games, so I was just like, oh man, it'd be super cool. It frees up the Green Lanterns to have some more different skins, and Parallax is just just awesome. And Parallax is just a super cool looking character. I think you could make him have a way more aggressive playstyle than the other Green Lanterns, making a lot of really cool constructs and different things. And it would be really fun to just see a kind of crazy maniacal Hal Jordan. I think the main costume has to be based off of his original look. You gotta have an intro with him showing off all the Green Lantern rings on him. He would have some of the best voice lines with other characters, bar none, and kind of also fits with the fear villains in Green Lantern 2, instead of going and doing like Atrocitus like Injustice 2 did, which I love Atrocitus in that game, but I figured let's mix things up. For skins, I picked the no armor version, which is kind of just more of a basic Hal Jordan look, still sporting like kind of the gray temples, but very just classic Hal Jordan a little bit. Next up is Kyle Rayner when he's possessed by Parallax. Again, getting Kyle Rayner in here second time, of course. This one is somewhat similar to the original costume, but I think would just be so creepy. And the last skin I chose is Parallax Superman. Of course, it's a little tough to reckon with, okay, if he's Superman, you should have him use more of his abilities, but with skins, you can kind of skirt that a little bit. I just thought it was too cool of an opportunity to pass up to have Parallax Superman in here. Get the whole yellow look on. Next up, the joke character for this game. One of my favorite Batman villains of all time. Players of the Lego Batman video game love him and adore him. Killer Moth. I think he should be the strongest character in the game, bar none, and the easiest to play, because of course, we need to see him on the top of all the tournaments. Killer Moth is maybe the most important character in DC history, and everyone loves him. I want to go with his first appearance, which is just kind of, again, more of a classic look. Teen Titans 2003, because that gives him a totally radically different look of being more of a mutant type look. And last but not least is, of course, his most iconic look, his Lego appearance. I don't know how they'd fit the rights in or anything, and it would be funny if he was the only Lego skin. I have no clue how they'd even wire that into a model, but you can't have Killer Moth without Lego Killer Moth. So yes, Killer Moth Best character in the game. Funny character. Next up, we have Katana. Of course, she's got my back. I would advise not getting killed by her. Her sword traps the souls of its victims. Katana is a classic character here who has kind of got a resurgence with Suicide Squad 2016. Memes aside, I think a lot of people really like Katana. She's just a cool member to fit in this game. Probably, she's not really much of a villain. She's more of an anti-hero, but I kind of put her in here just because with the Suicide Squad are mainly made up with villains, but she can also be kind of anti-hero-ish too. And yeah, just having a sword user like that. I was kind of debating, oh, you can do Katana, you can do Deathstroke. And of course, Deathstroke's super popular, but I wanted to go with someone a little different, so I chose Katana for this one. For her skins, I chose Suicide Squad 2016, because that's her most famous live-action appearance. Next is her New 52 look, and then last is her classic red and yellow suit, which I think would be really, really cool to see there. Again, you can maybe fit that into the cel-shaded category. Next up, we have to have a Wonder Woman villain in here, and I was wondering, I didn't want to do Ares, I thought he was kind of boring, I thought Dr. Psycho, maybe, Cheetah, maybe, but I settled on Circe. Recently, she appeared in Creature Commandos, and I think was pretty popular in that show. I know people didn't love some of her characterization in it, but I think overall, James Gunn did a good job integrating her into the new DCU, and I think she'd again, be another really cool magic user here. We have to have a Wonder Woman villain in here, of course. And she just would be really, really cool, mix things up. And I think she has some more sorcery stuff that's very different from Zatanna. For her skins, I think we have to have her Creature Commandos look. Cel-shaded, of course. Next up would be her Justice League Unlimited outfit. And then last would be a George Perez kind of look, kind of honoring his run on Wonder Woman, which is one of the, like, defining runs in the character. And George Perez's artwork is just, like, some of the best of DC of all time. Next up for our Flash villain, I chose Mirror Master. We've seen Reverse Flash as a skin. Again, Reverse Flash could probably be a skin for regular Flash. I didn't really want to include him. You could do Zoom in here somewhere. There's a few other characters. Captain Cold was in Injustice. He's super cool there. Mirror Master, I think, just has so much potential. His main costume here would definitely be based off of his look in Animal Man, actually, because it would be based off of the Evan McCulloch look, and he debuted in Animal Man. And having that Scottish accent would be hilarious, and all the different voice lines with people. And that look is already very similar to the classic Mirror Master look. I think it fit right in. As for skins, I'm going new with the skins here. Funny enough, recently, Mirror Master's been kind of realigned to be a major character in the new DC status quo. So two of his skins come from just recently, and that is his all-in look from the recent Flash run. Kind of a darker, more armory look, but is also still Evan McCulloch. Next up would be his Absolute look, which is the look we've seen in Absolute Flash. We've seen him in the DC All-In Special this year. A very different look, more of like kind of a nerdy, hooded type 1 glasses. I think having both of these would be really cool because it seems like they're going to be huge in the next phase of DC. For his last look, I chose his look from the Batman cartoon. It's pretty similar to his classic outfit, but it has kind of his hair exposed, would be kind of cool. You could even do maybe like the female Mirror Master from the CW if you wanted another skin, but I don't think that arc is very well liked from what season 18 of The Flash, right? Yeah, so Mirror Master would have so much potential. You could have the Rogues come in for alt attacks. Mirror World stage would be awesome. Probably should be one of the harder characters to play in the game. Next up, we have Darkseid. Again, another tribute to Jack Kirby here. We saw Darkseid in Injustice 2. I imagine his moveset being very similar. I think they nailed it in that game. His Omega Beams, his attitude of being invincible, it was just perfectly replicated. I think he's one of the coolest Injustice 2 characters. As for skins, we have to include Snyder Cut skin in here. He's definitely more gray in that one. I don't know if I go full black and white, kind of alluding to the Justice's gray cut, or just the regular version. Either works. I really like that look, and I really like the Snyder Cuts. It would be really cool to see him in there. Next up, speaking of New 52, would be his New 52 look from the Justice League run. Of course, Justice League New 52 was very heavily read, kind of as a reboot of the Justice League. The Zack Snyder movies took a lot of inspiration from that for the Justice League movie, and it's different enough where I think it'd be pretty cool to be in here. Last would be his all-in look. I love this look that he has in the all-in special with the hood and the red. It's just awesome. Of course, he does die right after it, but it's awesome. It's such a cool look. As for maybe some of his attacks, I think getting in some of the other new gods in there would be really cool. Having like Desaad kind of sneaking around. I think maybe a new god stage would be really, really cool with Apocalypse and all that stuff. Maybe have some parademons coming out of a boom tube as well. Next up is another Batman villain, and again, with the Batman villains on this list, I didn't want to just do the very basic expected ones, so I chose a 90s favorite, or maybe not so favorite, Azrael. He represents the excess of the 90s as a whole. I think a lot of people know him from Arkham Knight and the Arkham games as a whole, and I think his sword combat, in addition to martial arts, would be awesome. And he has some of the coolest skin opportunities. You have to have the overly done 90s Batman Azrael armor, of course. You can't not have that. Next would be the Arkham Knight look, not an Arkham Knight skin. What Azrael looks like in Arkham Knight. For his last skin from the Dark Multiverse storyline, I chose Saint Batman. All of the edge. Last for the base roster, who I envision as being the overall villain for this game and the final boss of a hypothetical story mode, would be Amazo. Amazo is a very heavily utilized Justice League character. His main look can look kind of goofy, but I've always thought his ability of replicating all of the Justice League powers is just so cool, and I had the idea that I really want to include more characters, but I'm trying to mentally limit myself to 30 on the base roster here. How can I sneak some people in? And of course, you've seen with Crypto and some of the skins how I've managed to do it. But with Amazo, I imagine him doing full-blown other moves from other Justice League members. For instance, you could have him use the powers of Fire and Ice from Justice League International. There's so many characters beyond just him using Superman or you know, Flash's powers or anything like that. And we saw in a recent storyline kind of a new wave of Amazos. In the recent Absolute Power event, we saw these like Justice League versions of Amazo or whatever. And so the skins basically consist of that. He's had a very consistent design over the years. He has a pretty bad design in the CW, which I almost considered as a skin. But the Last Sun, Velocity, and Jadestone skins from Absolute Power to me are just so much cooler. And no one wants CW Amazo. Do people even remember that Amazo was in the CW? He was. Yeah. So that's my main 30 character base roster. I really tried to even it out with Justice League members, kind of some more obscure picks, some fan favorites, long requested, maybe a few characters you never have even thought of. And then for the villains, I especially wanted to mix things up and not have it just be characters we've already seen before. Next, we're going to move on to the DLC. The DLC characters I envision as mostly guest characters with 2 caveats specifically. I'm thinking of this in 2 waves where each wave consists of 5 characters. And I think it'd be really fun to have some of these choices in here. And I think a lot of these you guys might not have expected. Maybe one was hinted at in the thumbnail though. So for DLC Wave 1, our first character is Invincible. Of course, Invincible. You gotta have him in here. He's kind of crossed over with Batman for about 2 seconds, and he's probably the most popular superhero right now with the advent of the show. I love all of the comics of it. He just fit in super well. We just saw Omni-Man in Mortal Kombat, and I think in a little bit more of a lighter-hearted DC game, Invincible would work. You'd have to tone down the gore a little bit, especially just using a lot of more acrobatic moves as opposed to Superman, who I imagine being more of kind of a blunter attacker. As for his skins, of course his main skin has to be his yellow suit. There's no argument there. It's pretty obvious. For his alternate outfits, though, you'd have his blue suit that everyone's recently seen in Season 3. His caped suit, which is from later on when he goes to visit Oliver. And then his last skin would be a spoiler to say, so maybe they wouldn't include it, but if you guys know what he looks like at the very end of the comic, that costume I think would be really, really cool to see in there. But if you didn't want to have a spoiler look, you could do any of the tens of alternate Invincibles we see. Maybe it'd be cool to bring in the Mohawk Invincible. He's a fun one, but he has so many different alternate costume options. And I think for his ult, you have to have the Guardians of the Globe come in here, get a bunch of those Invincible characters in there. He fits perfectly into this roster. Next up, we have our first DC character, Captain Carrot. The iconic animal superhero would be perfect for this game if we're going for a more lighthearted look. Captain Carrot is someone I could never in a million years imagine in Injustice. And he would just be completely wacky. I almost think of this as a way to get in Bugs Bunny with him too. Just have a bunch of cartoon logic, but in a way that's really earnest too. I've always really liked Captain Carrot. He's another character who's had a very just consistent design over the years, especially because he hasn't appeared very often. But for his base skin, I definitely think should be a cel-shaded classic look. And then one of his skins should be a very hyper-realistic bunny. Would be creepy, but would be so cool. Next up we have Kamen Rider. This was one of the ones I was most proud of thinking of as a guest character. He fits in perfectly. People have clamored for Power Rangers, which, of course, would also be awesome in a DC game. But Kamen Rider is an awesome Japanese superhero. He just has so much moveset potential. You have to have him do the rider kick. You got him on his motorcycle. He's so cool. I've basically never seen him suggested in any of these video game fighting rosters. And as a Japanese superhero, he would just be awesome. And I think someone like the Red or Green Ranger could maybe fit in a slot similar, but I have a certain affinity for Kamen Rider. I think his main outfit should be based on his look in Shin Kamen Rider with the coat, and his first alternate skin should be Kamen Rider 2 from Shin Kamen Rider, who has the very different helmet. For his last two skins, I chose black. That's a very famous Kamen Rider series, and that costume looks very different from the rest. And then 01, which is one of the most popular newer series, again, very cool, unique costume. Kamen Rider is another one of those characters where you could just have infinite alternate costumes. Next up, we have The Last Ronin. Now, you might be thinking, we just had the TMNT in Injustice 2. Do we really need another turtle? And I argue yes. I think The Last Ronin would have a way different moveset than the turtles in Injustice 2. I think having Michelangelo on his last legs kind of would just be awesome. He'd be a really cool heavyweight character. Of course, his main look should be what he looks like in the comics. And he's going to get a huge resurgence with a Last Ronin movie and video game soon enough. And I love the Last Ronin comic, so I think it'd be really cool to put him in here. As for alternate skins, because Last Ronin's so new, there isn't a lot to specifically based on for that. So I went with a black and white Mirage look where it would be basically all black and white, kind of cel-shaded with a red bandana, like how they all have in the classic Mirage comics. And for his second outfit, I threw in classic Michelangelo. It maybe wouldn't work, but he does appear as his classic, variant in The Last Ronin earlier on in the flashbacks and stuff, so it would work. The last character for Wave 1 is Solid Snake. He is the first character here that does not originate from a comic, but I think he would fit in really well. I am a huge fan of the Metal Gear series, and I think as a kind of spy character with a lot of gadgets, he would just be really, really cool. There's a lot of moveset potential. I was thinking of a kind of like adjacent character from a video game, because we see in like Mortal Kombat, they'll take movie characters, and I think if this is a video game, I think it'd be cool to pull in another video game character. And you can't say that the interactions between Solid Snake and Batman wouldn't be really, really fun. As for his skins, he has a lot of options, but I'd mainly go with his MGS1 outfit. You could either do like the PS1 poly look, which would be really, really cool, or you could do a just modernized version of the MGS1 outfit. Either way it works, I think. Next would be Naked Snake, Big Boss from MGS3. Of course, they're not the same character, but the movesets are similar enough that you can make it work. And his last look would be his MGS4 Old Snake outfit with the Octo camo. Again, that's probably the first one here that's going to throw you for a loop, but just wait, because there's some coming up here in Wave 2 that are probably crazier. Alright, DLC Wave 2. Our first one here is Access. And you might be saying, who's Access? I've never heard of this person ever. How is this your hype DLC character? This is lame. Access is a DC character, but is also a Marvel character. He's the only character owned by both companies. Access is cool because in the Marvel vs. DC storylines, in the crossovers in the 90s, he would travel between the universes. He actually originates from Earth 616 in the Marvel universe. And so, ignoring being able to get a Marvel character, which, spoilers, there's no Marvel characters on this list. I don't think there's a world where they would be able to get any of them. I think this would be the closest they'd be able to wrangle. And I think Access, you could do a lot of tongue-in-cheek nods in his moveset to Marvel characters. Maybe having him have Mjolnir, because Thor is a character that is copyright free. So you can use some Thor stuff. maybe a few other things, and I just think he'd be a really, really cool deep cut. I think that a lot of people wouldn't be expecting. As for skins, I think a Stars and Stripe, like Captain America look would be really cool. Again, referencing that. A Thor look, where he's just in like kind of a Thor outfit. And then for his last skin, it'd probably be more of a 2-in-1 palette swap type thing, referencing the brothers from the Marvel DC crossover, which are the two kind of higher beings of both of the universes that are the kind of the main catalysts of the event. And I just think Access would be super cool. If we couldn't get a Marvel character, it'd be kind of nice to have that kind of wink at those storylines that a lot of fans really love. Next up, we have Ben 10. Ben 10, Ben 10, Ben 10, Ben 10. I have seen so many requests for him to be integrated into the DC universe. He's already owned by Warner Brothers. He was on Cartoon Network, airing alongside all of these awesome DC shows. Ben 10 would fit perfectly. You have him transform into all the different aliens. It would fit really, really well. As for his skins, again, very easy character for skins. I chose his Alien Force, his Omniverse, and his Ben 10,000 look. I think all of those would be really, really cool. Next up, we have Goku, another Japanese hero. I think he would be awesome. Talk about an attention-grabbing headline if you could have Goku versus Superman finally duke it out in a video game. It would be really cool. Not counting Fortnite, of course. I think Goku fits in really well. I almost considered throwing in his son Gohan as the Great Saiyaman, but not only is that already similar to Kamen Rider, but I think people want Goku. Just flat out, people would want Goku. So he's in. All of his attacks would be based, I think, taking a lot of influence from, of course, the anime and manga, but Fighter Z a lot especially, and Sparking Zero. So for his main skin, it's his just classic orange gi that we see in Dragon Ball Z for the majority of it. Would work well with basically all their transformations. For his skins, I think the blue gi from the end of Dragon Ball Z would be really cool to see. I've always really liked that look, and it hasn't shown up that often just because of how little it's utilized, but it would be really cool to see. Next up would be the driving exam outfit. I think it'd be really funny, and just, yeah, basically it'd just be funny. So I think that's a reason enough to include it. Last, I have the Whiskey. There's some other, you could maybe do his green jacket from Broly, or any number of other slight variations on his gis. Maybe if you threw Kid Goku in, that'd be kind of hard. I didn't really want to do any of the other Saiyans, because I think they'd fight differently enough that I wouldn't really want him to have Goku's moveset. But you could throw Gohan in here too if you really wanted to. It wouldn't be that big of a deal. Next up, we have Gandalf. Again, a Warner Brothers character, so he'd be super easy to get in here. Gandalf, of course, not much of a connection to DC, but he's a famous literary character. Of course, him in all of the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings movies are just so iconic. I even have a little bit of nostalgia of him being one of the main playable characters in Lego Dimensions alongside Batman. So it'd be really cool to see Gandalf in here as a wizard, and I think he'd play very differently from a lot of the other sorcerers that we've seen so far. You might say this is jumping the shark a little bit, but I don't know. I think he'd fit in really well. And we've seen Gandalf interact with, again, Batman and a few of the other characters in LEGO Dimensions before. I just think it'd be super fun. As for skins, we have Gandalf the White, Saruman, and Radagast. I think just getting those wizards in there, very easy. Saruman and Radagast, they're a little different. Maybe you would kind of keep them out, but I just tried to shove in as many characters as possible. For our final character, we have Sonic the Hedgehog. Of course, Sonic is a massive character. He's had 3 hit movies. He's had plenty of huge video games, but I think what a lot of people forget is he has a massive history in comics. He has had nearly an unbroken run going back to 1991 of comics running. Of course, the Archie comics that I grew up with were the ones that ran the longest until that was canceled. But basically, immediately after that, the IDW comics picked that up. And of course, right now in the comics, we're seeing a Sonic and DC crossover. So he's already interacting with all the DC characters, and it's really fantastic to see. If you pulled in another video game character, I think Sonic is just number one. I just wanted to leave him for last because he is so different from the rest. That's why I kind of prioritize Solid Snake as going in a wave 1 to kind of get people prepped that there could be other video game characters. Sonic has so much potential for a moveset. I think you could take a lot from Sonic the Fighters. You can maybe even have him drive his car from racing at some point. Yeah, there's so many different things you could do there. As for his skins, I definitely would say Flash Sonic has to be one of them from the new crossover. it looks awesome. You have to do it. Adventure 1 would be the next skin. I'd probably go low poly for this one, and would just really complete the look. You could also do Adventure 2 if you wanted for the soap shoes. Either way works for that. And for his last skin, I choose his movie outfit because, of course, the movies are huge, and that would be awesome. All right, well, that was a long video, but that is going to do it for my ideal DC fighting game roster. I think that this is a pretty well-balanced roster. I know some people might think I go a little overboard with the guest characters at the end, maybe a few that wouldn't fit in there, but I think it's cool enough. Hopefully you let it slide. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and watch out for my next video. I'm going to keep them coming really fast here. This is my first video on the channel. Please tell me any feedback in the comments is very, very appreciated as I start this channel early on. And thank you.